All right. In today's meetup, I will go over container security vulnerability scanning with Trivy. So we're going to do a deep dive on Trivy. It's a tool from ArcoSec, and it's a simple yet powerful tool that we can use in multiple development and release workflows. So we're not just going to look at containers. We can also look at file system and scanning Git repositories. Everything that Trivy can do. We'll go over that. I am a principal DevOps architect at Amobi. Amobi is an ed tech company, and I've been with the company for a few months. Before that, I was in a DevOps consultancy, and we did, um, you know, I worked with a lot of different clients, including Fortune 100, some of them, and helped them really create their cloud native strategy and or accelerate in some cases. All right. Got this window. So if you are joining for the first time, we have a hashtag meetup-dc Kubernetes workspace on slack.kubernetes.io. That is the CNCF community. If you want to stay connected and talk to your peers, that's a great place. And we also have an annual event, Kubernetes Community Days DC, coming up on November 4th. So don't forget to sign up for that as well. We are taking right now, the call for proposals is out, so don't forget to sign up and send us your talks if you have any. So today we're going to go over container security vulnerability scanning. The agenda is that first 10 minutes, I'm going to go over Trivy, what the tool can do, how you can install it, and then we will drill down into an inline demo. It's more like a terminal, and then on my Mac, and we can go over that. Run a few simple tests. After that, we will go over the CI/CD integration side of Trivy and how it can be integrated into CI/CD and what kind of plugins and integrations are available. And after that, we have another demo, um, and then we can do questions and feedback. So going over the tool, first off, Trivy is it's a scanner which can scan container images. As you can see, container images, file system, and Git repositories. So you can just point that to any source, one of these sources, and it can look for container images. If it's a container image, it can look for vulnerabilities. If it's in the file system, it can look for vulnerabilities. The vulnerabilities can look for is two different kinds. One, operating system vulnerabilities. So if you have a bad version of, some SSO package that you have installed, or an older version of curl, or whatever operating system packages you have, it's going to look at that in containers. And then also look for vulnerabilities in your application dependencies. So if you have a Python application, a Node application, a .NET application, it's going to go look at your package.json and see if any of those libraries, any of those open source libraries that you just added from NuGet repo or npm .org, those are good and they have not been identified in any vulnerability databases. And the third thing it does look at is the misconfiguration. So misconfiguration, meaning it's going to scan your artifacts, scan your manifest files. If it's a Docker file, it's Kubernetes manifest, or it's a Terraform, TF files. It's going to look at those and apply a set of policies on those, and give you the results. Sorry, I jumped to the next slide. Same with the Git repository. So that's kind of like a big picture. I pulled this out from their GitHub repository. It's a pretty good image. So like I said, scanning packages and libraries on operating systems. It does have first-class integration with Alpine and RHEL. So they are much more granular and relevant with Alpine and RHEL, but does also do a bunch of other ones too. So Debian-based operating systems like Debian Ubuntu also does Amazon Linux, CentOS, lot of them. I added a link here for further reference. And then language packages, you can look at .NET, Java, Node.js, your Ruby applications, Go modules. So also there's a good bit of list there. I think eight or something different languages. And the third is the configuration. So it is using a third-party tool called OPA, Open Policy Agent. If you're not familiar with it, it's a tool that um, runs this policy engine called Rego and can scan any file. So it's like a very generic tool which can run on any artifact and then tell you if that file has. So it takes like JSON and YAML files as input. OPA. So this kind of uses that tool and provides you a bunch of built-in policies to scan for security issues, for known best practices, and Kubernetes manifest and Docker files. So it's great and handy tool. I don't know if you've worked with Hedolint or similar, like Conftest or other tools. So there are a bunch of tools out there. This kind of provides like this one-stop shop. So very simple utility, one-stop shop for security and misconfiguration. So that's kind of really cool. The other thing is that it taps into published vulnerability data sources. So where it's getting all the information about vulnerabilities in these OS packages, in the language libraries and misconfigurations. So it is looking at all these sources published by Arch Linux Group, Amazon, Alpine Linux, Amazon Linux. You can see they have this list of places where all these vulnerabilities are published. So it's looking at all these resources. So it's not a proprietary database from one place. It's more like a public database. Pulls down and it scans your code for all of the vulnerabilities there, right? And then, so it's a fast scanner. In my experience, it's pretty fast. Looks up very quickly, and another thing is that you can also do multiple runs of scans if you have to. So first scan is the comprehensive scan. Second scan, maybe you are looking for critical or high vulnerabilities. In that case, you can do another scan, which is going to be like in seconds. So all of this is just single binary of Trivy that we will download. It does not support Windows. It's just pretty much Nix-based systems, and it's an open source tool, right? So it's an open source tool. This is their repo. This is their documentation site. Pretty straightforward. The installation, the information on vulnerability scanning, and a bunch of other things here, right? And misconfigurations, what it can do for built-in policies and other things. We'll go over these in a little bit further, but just the introduction. So if you're installing this, there are two modes to it. By far, the one that I've used is the standalone mode. That's just pretty simple. You just download this Trivy utility. For example, I have Mac, so I just go and do brew install, and then install this from Trivy, and then run this on this Python image. That's it. Just 2 lines. What it's going to do is when you run it the first time, when you do Trivy image, it's going to go and download all of the database vulnerabilities database, right, from all the sources that we saw. So it's going to download databases in one file on local machine, and it's going to go, that it checks for any updates every 12 hours. So you can program it by this. Basically, it's default is that every 12 hours it's going to go and retry, see if there are any new updates to databases. And then, so it scans at the image layer level. So it's also saves that information and it speeds up. Number 3 step here is that analyze layers and store information in cache. So once you scan the image, the information is saved in the cache so that when you rerun it, and if it's the same layer, essentially, it's not going to take any time. And then detect any security issues and apply layers to detect any security issues. The other mode is the client server mode. If you want to run this in a configuration where you have a centralized database location, maybe you are trying to do an offline install, an air-gapped network, right? In that case, you may want to have this downloaded manually in a server, and then you have multiple agents downloading information, right? So that's, you could do that, but that's pretty much essentially. So you go and say Trivy run in the server mode, and then client connects with it, and then goes and scans this image, right? All right, so that brings us to the demo. Um, the first thing here is we're going to scan a Git repo file system, a Docker image, look at a few configuration files, and then we will review what kind of options Trivy provides. I'm going to stop sharing this and then start sharing um, my command line. All right. Share. You guys can see this, see my screen okay? I'm going to make this bigger. All right. Okay, so first things first, what I'm going to do is to brew install Arca Security Trivy. I think that's the URL. I may go and check, but okay. Homebrew, installing Trivy. You can also download it from their website, right? So they have like a page which is they have like a script which automatically looks for your operating system type. And you know what? I'm gonna share my whole screen. So if I'm going back and forth, you guys can see everything. Share. Okay. All right. So turn this. We'll keep this on. Okay. So as you can see here, this one right here is the. So it also provides you this inline script. So you can, for any operating system and architecture, it's going to automatically detect and download the right binary for you. So it's pretty cool. Okay, seems like it did go ahead and install this tool. So let's see if we have it now, Trivy. All right, so I have this on the system. It has these subcommands of Trivy image, file system, repository, client server modes. We saw about that, and then configuration, and then also plugins. Let's go quickly look at the first thing, which is Trivy repo, right? And then it tells me some options about if you want to do a Trivy repo, you can scan a remote repository, give it some commands, and try the repo URL. I have this repository used several times. So if I go to this fun fact repository, so I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy this URL and plug this into basically command K. Okay, so I'm going to say Trivy repo this URL. You see, it's just downloading the DB, and then it scanned very quickly. It found that I have a package JSON in my repository. I have like multiple things in it, but the JSON was the one which has issues in it. And then it showed me this output in a tabular format, right? It's saying that in this repository, I have basically this one right here. I have a medium vulnerability. Another good thing is that it gives me this information about these vulnerabilities, and I can go and read more about this and learn what the vulnerability is, so I can come and fix it, or create like a Jira ticket based on that. So so it says this is an acorn. I have a medium severity vulnerability, but this one right here, Pug is that a rendering engine Node.js, right? So the templating engine, that seems to be a big, it's a critical issue. And the fixed version is 3.0, and I have 1.1 installed, and this is a CVE out for that. And you can do like remote code execution with pretty option. So, I mean, obviously, when you're looking at a vulnerability, this is severity, based on the kind of access somebody can get to, right? but this severity for you may be different. You may have a severity where you're thinking, what is the sophistication of the intruder, um, or the skills needed to you know break into this. And then number two is it inside the network or it's outside the network, and then the impact it's going to have if it's compromised, how many systems. So normally these three criteria is the level of sophistication needed to attack, the impact, the blast radius for it, and then intention, malicious intent. Somebody, it's just it's a small thing, but those kind of are the basic criteria based on which you would identify your severity. But this one is just on the impact. It doesn't tell you other things. So similarly, if I were, so that's, I kind of looked at my Node.js file right here and said, looked at my package.json and found out that I'm using a library which has a vulnerability in it. If I were to look at an image, right? So if I do Trivy image scan, right? So I have, let's say, OpenJDK, older OpenJDK version. So you can see it has like a bunch of vulnerabilities, because also this is an older image I'm scanning. I'm not scanning the latest JDK. I'm scanning an older one. It, since I already have this downloaded, it was went pretty quickly. And now it's just pretty much operating system packages at this point, because I don't have the application in there. It's looking at all the application, all the operating system packages that have been patched over the time, and then saying, you know what, these packages have known vulnerabilities. Um, all right, that sounds good. How about if we look at a newer JDK version, right? Not an older one. Let's just go and say latest one. We may not have latest OpenJDK, and it might have to download that. Um, but it seems like glibc, even the latest one, has fewer, but this is definitely um, something that is there's a fix out for that. glibc has a bunch of errors, but not as much as the older versions. The third thing I can do is, if I have, and this is very important for me, that if I'm a developer, I want to go and scan my file system when I'm building the application. So I want to scan if my application has any issues on the spot before I commit my changes, right? So rather than waiting all the way for the pipeline or check-ins or for other things, I can just go in here, say Trivy, file system, and then same thing, Node.js folder. I have it right there. So I can say scan my Node.js folder and said, oh yeah, your Node.js has this issue. Um, what if I were to do, so some of the options that I have looked over and which are really cool that I wanted to go over were Trivy, okay, Trivy, let's say file system, and all the file system image and others have it. The one is this one, severity. A lot of times you're not probably concerned about unknown low and medium vulnerabilities. What you want to really filter vulnerabilities on is your critical and high vulnerabilities, because those are serious threats and you want to address those, right? So you want to filter on those. And other thing is that if you are scanning in a container, sometimes you might want to separate your vulnerabilities from operating system to library. If it's an OS and you do not control OS, and you're like, OS is provided a golden image by DevOps, and I'm really the one who is concerned about libraries. So you can go and limit your scope and say, just tell me the library vulnerabilities only. Um, Another cool one is ignore unfixed. A lot of times you will see that you have vulnerabilities pointed out, and you're like, this vulnerability, there's no fix, there's a known issue, but there's no fix out in open source world. In that case, it has a database of, it also like looks if there is no fix. I think it doesn't work that good with Alpine, but for rest of the operating system images and other things, it does go and looks if there is no fix available. It's going to ignore that vulnerability. It's going to list it, but it's not going to count that as a something with that severity. It's going to say it's ignored, right? So these are pretty cool options, right? So we can go and try some of these. So Trivy, severity, is critical. Well, Trivy FS. And then I will say ignore unfixed. And also hide this. Sorry, unfixed. And then I will say, just go look in my Node.js folder. Um, and that's my command, Trivy FS. So I'm just taking file system, only critical issues, and ignore unfixed Node.js. It's just one vulnerability, pretty neat and clean command. So that's kind of what I wanted to go over real quick. Any questions on this? Could you guys let's take a quick look if you have any questions, and then we can jump into the next part of CI/CD. Slides. Um, right here. Okay. Go over the chat real quick. Thank you, Peter. I jumped in a bit late. Will this flag attribute container images are running container themselves like the container run is root? Yes. So that's a good question. I did wanted to go over that too, a config, right? So if a container, so if you want to, rather than just looking at file system vulnerabilities, you can also find misconfigurations. Let's go look at manifests. Well, so it's looking at Kubernetes manifest. So it does, if you have a Docker file which is running as root, it will actually go and find and report that issue that, this Docker file is, if you go to Trivy right here, let's go click, there are a couple of examples of misconfigurations in the repository. And then, so there is file patterns, custom policy, custom data, mixed namespace, and rule exceptions. Let's look at mixed configs. This is a Docker file, right? A simple Docker file. And it has a bunch of other files too. So it's the mixed is means that it's going to scan everything for you. So this one right here, as you can see, since the container is running in a it's running in as a root, it is pointed out that it's a configuration that needs to be fixed, right? So we'll come back to it if we have a time at the end. The next one is the CI/CD integration. So for CI/CD, when I want to run a configuration tool in CI/CD, the thing I want to try to do always is that the tool should be as fast as possible. It should be synchronous. Sometimes you get these tools that are async, and they publish the results later. That doesn't fly really. It doesn't give you that instance feedback. So I want that, and then another thing is that if I know there's a vulnerability, but I'm not directly calling that, there's like 3 tiers to that vulnerability, and the person that I'm relying on has not fixed that vulnerability. And if there's nothing I can do about it, in that case, I want to go and say, ignore these. So you take on the risk, right? So you take on the risk and say, ignore these vulnerabilities, and it's fine. The third thing is the filtering. We already saw how we can filter, and then also generate reports that can be shared and consumed easily, right? Something that is then built into your CI. You can always go back and refer to your skates. And in these regards, Trivy has this Trivy ignore file. You can just like a .git ignore, you can create a Trivy ignore and put in the CVE codes in your file, and then it's not going to report those vulnerabilities. Similarly, you can generate reports like we saw in a tabular format. You can also go in and report HTML format. You can create a report in JUnit, some other scanning, formats as needed. And then in terms of integration, it's most times it's just a CLI. You download it, have it available on your build agent, and then you can call it up. In case of GitHub Actions, Arco Security has published a GitHub action as well, which you can integrate and run in your GitHub workflows. Or you can use a Docker file as well. So that's another option. So that's kind of cool that it completes and it covers all of the aspects really that I am really concerned about. And I would love to hear your feedback on that. So with that, I'm going to jump into a Jenkins demo. So what I want to do here is I want to set up a Jenkins pipeline and run Trivy in it for my code. So you already saw my fun fact application, and when I build that application, I want to go in and um, see how it works. So what I did was for preparation, I kind of made this command readily available, which basically is going to go and run Jenkins in a Docker container for me. it's a it's a pretty standard format. What I want to do though is instead of running it here, I want to go to Trivy Jenkins folder and run it there because in Jenkins because there's a data directory I have set up my GitHub integration there. It's going to just help us do this faster and focus on the thing that matters. Okay, Jenkins is coming up. It took like, I don't know, 7 or 8 minutes for Jenkins to set up initially. So I thought I'll not do setup during the demo and I'll do a setup beforehand. But it's a vanilla, pretty much vanilla Jenkins. I have just enabled a couple of plugins and I'll go through those in a minute. All right, so let's go and hop over to localhost 8080. Coming up. All right, see that? It's I got no project here. And in terms of the things that I have installed, it was really basic. I have 2 plugins really installed here, which matter to this demo, right? Out of the basic ones. One was the GitHub integration one, this GitHub plugin, this one right here. And then the other one is HTML Publisher plugin, because I want to generate an HTML report, and then I want to publish that report over to Jenkins pipeline as an artifact so that I can go and review that later, right? So that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and create a job. I want to create a pipeline, and I want to call this a fun fact. As you can see, I have tried this before. Fun fact pipeline. It's going to go and ask me, it should ask me about a source, right? It's coming from an SCM. It's going to be a Git. And then it's asking me for the repository. I already have the credentials saved for me for the path, for the repository. So let's go look at that. GitHub.com. This is my repo, right? It's copy the HTTPS. It's a path, so down in the SSH key. Go right here. The thing that I want to try this on is the Jenkins branch. I don't want to go run this on master. I have a Jenkins file on Jenkins branch. Let's go ahead and apply this. Let's go look at that Jenkins branch file and what does that pipeline file look like. This one, this is the code I have. What I'm doing here is I'm going and installing. I showed you guys this install URL, right? So I go and install this Trivy, and then I also download a HTML template from their website, from the GitHub repo. So HTML template is what I'm going to use. So you can use your custom templates, but they also have these built-in templates, and one of them is the HTML templates. I can use this template when I run this. I'll say go ahead, Trivy run file system, because I check out the source code and look for vulnerabilities of library and operating system type, and then use this template to generate the output right here. So it's pretty much the same command that we were running before, except this HTML template. And then I go and publish that template in the pipeline, right? I do another thing here, by the way, which is I run the scan again. And this time I run the scan with saying that, I only want critical vulnerabilities to be reported, and I want to do an exit code 1. So meaning this is not going to go in and fail my build pipeline, but this will. If I have critical vulnerabilities, then my exit code is going to be 1, and it's going to fail the pipeline, right? Which is kind of what I need here. So let's go. Let's go look at this. Let's go build it now. Getting it. Probably spam call. Okay. All right. So it's gonna download, it's do a thing, and then checking with the source code. As you can see now, it's downloading Trivy, set it up, and now it's downloading the database, and it found actually a vulnerability. Yikes, a critical vulnerability, and it failed the pipeline, right? So this is pretty simple step that I can integrate. If I already had Trivy downloaded and I had cache and everything on, and I'm running multiple pipelines on this agent, then I wouldn't need to download it. I can just go and run the Trivy command. For rest of the organization, I can also go in and integrate this into my shared library in Jenkins and let everybody just use a shared library, call in a function to Trivy scan, and it's going to go and scan their folder. So you can really improve the user interface there on it. So this is how I can see. And another good thing is that it was, you saw that it was pretty fast. If I go and click on this, you see right here, I have this Trivy scan uploaded in my pipeline, right? That's the HTML publisher plugin. So I generated this report and I published it, and now it's available, and I can see all the vulnerabilities, including critical, all of the vulnerabilities. And then I have these links and advice links and documentation pages. Sometimes I even see like a Medium article here, which really gives you very good information on what the issue is, what the fix is, what the severity of it is, all of that information, right? And I can now reference this URL and send it to my team and say, hey, you guys have these vulnerabilities in here that you need to address, right? And, this is your artifact, which is going to get, which is stored, and you can use this in multiple um, you, it's attached to this pipeline, and it's going to be saved as long as you have this build saves. When you delete the build, then the artifact is deleted as well. For me, it's good enough, and I can also go and ship this off to an S3 bucket and have a centralized reporting after that. Save a JSON version of that too. So that's kind of what quickly we looked at Jenkins. Another thing that I was looking at is the plugin that comes out with GitHub Actions. So GitHub Actions, if I can go in here and say, you can see that there's also this Trivy available here. Set up this workflow, so it automatically pulled some of the configuration for me, and that's okay. Mostly good. It's going to get a Ubuntu worker for me. Check out my source code, run this Docker build command, and I'm not. I'm just gonna say, oh, let's just call this Trivy or Fun Fact. Sorry, Fun Fact. That's my application. I don't want to give it a long-winded name. And then go and look at Fun Fact. I'm not pushing this to a new repository. I'm just building it locally and then running a Trivy on it. And then the other thing is going to go ahead and create like a Serif report, which then is going to be nicely integrated into GitHub, right? So we can go and see then security issues here. All right, so it's pretty much what we did on the other side, but this is more on, this is running it on a container in a GitHub Actions kind of a way. So let's go ahead and commit this. Okay, so it should trigger because I have a trigger on master, so it should trigger right now. It seems like it's triggering. Right here, it's going to look for an agent and then start build. You do get a few hundred, I think, free minutes from Microsoft on GitHub Actions if you are trying this out for the first time. Now it's just running the Docker build. I got an error here. Right here, it says process complete. No such file. Fun fact. Oh yeah, you know what? Actually, yikes! I actually did not do this right. I just said go run it on everything. I should have given it a so I say go run this, build this Docker file. I did not give it a location of the Docker file. The location of the Docker file is, it could be, Node.js. I have multiple, so I can do .NET, whatever folder. Now in Node.js, I have a Docker file there too. So I'll go ahead and say, just look in that folder, and in that folder, there's a Docker file. So we should be good on that. Okay. Did it commit? Let's see if it triggers a build. It did. And same thing again. While this is happening, we can look at any questions you guys might have. So can I point this at a running container though and have it scan the live environment? Yes. I mean, you can just point it to a slash folder or a folder wherever the container is exploded. It's the same thing. You can have it scan a live environment. Absolutely. It's going to look for those vulnerabilities in your slash bin lib directories and everywhere. So you can definitely do that. Docker file might specify a non-root user, but the operator overrode the runtime and is making it run as a root or with edit capabilities. You don't really need root capabilities. You do need to be able to read files. If you cannot read files, then it wouldn't let you, obviously wouldn't find anything if you can't do that. So a job is successful, and then it actually uploaded our security report. Okay, so that's kind of the end. I'm going to stop recording here.